Let me be very clear. The fact that we are not big fans of the Acolyte so far, to put it mildly, doesn't mean you have to agree with us. I'm saying this in reference to a comment we got from our last video. In fact, we hope you do enjoy the show. And we are happy for you if you do. This is the review of champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar could find to watch the Acolyte with us. Let me introduce them to you. First up, we have Mr. Taylor first, the original. How are you?
Excellent.
Force still with you, or?
Yes.
Good.
The force is with me.
With us as well is Merv, showing his beautiful face on camera. How are you?
Fantastic.
Voice only, we have Mr. Lord Deathman. How are you?
Hey everyone, I'm doing okay. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this sensory deprivation experience, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Well, as you might have guessed, today we're going to talk about episode 8, the season finale called The Acolyte of The Acolyte original. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our forum at Sakar, sakar.freeforums.net. If you don't know how to find us, there's a link in the description below. Check it out. Consider this your final warning. After this point, the spoilers are incoming. So if you haven't seen this week's episode yet, go do that first, and then check out our review. So I have only one question to ask to our champions. Did the season finale save this show? And I'm going to start with Lord Deathman. Lord Deathman, you're a writer, right?
I dabble. Yes, I do.
Yes. And isn't art a combination of substance and form? And, well, let's just say the Acolyte has some substance. I mean, they ask you the question, moral intentions, good moral intentions, bad actions, and the other way around. But if it's presented in this form, doesn't even matter.
It is very apropos that you would ask that particular question. Form, substance, and the Acolyte muddles a lot of different creative ideas, I think. One of the most interesting things, and I think a part of my quick reaction, now that I've seen this entire series, I do feel like the creators behind this show are ready to move us away from the simple morality plays of old Star Wars, where you had clear ideas about good and evil and things of that nature. And they want us to be in a new place where things aren't so clear cut. They want us to sort of explore feelings and trauma and things of that nature that motivate people to do the things that we do, which finds me in a place where, personally, as a Star Wars fan, if this is going to be the vision moving forward, I'm not sure that I could watch a show where I'm not entirely sure of who I should be rooting for at any given moment. But all of that aside, I think this finale is a bit more coherent than the previous episodes, and I do think it goes a long way towards resolving some of the long-standing mysteries that have been out there with the series. And I do want to give some praise to the fight choreography and the visual effects, especially the fight between May and Osha, because that involved the same actress, and it looked fairly convincing. And I think that Amanda Stenberg managed to conjure up some physicality that I hadn't really seen before from her in the series. So I do think they did a wonderful job with that. But at the end of the day, it's still all in service of a very non-existent story with what I feel are uninteresting characters who have unclear motivations. So at the end of the day, it was a valiant effort with this final episode, but I think that it was a little late and too little.
Too little, too late. Well, that we should just name this week's review that too little, too late. But anyway, Taylor, when you were watching Khmer wiping May's memory, were you screaming at your TV, "That's not how the Force works," or did you actually like that?
No, I didn't like that for a variety of reasons. One, yeah, the Force doesn't do that. At least it never has before. Maybe it does now. I don't know. But there was no reason to do it. They could have all just gotten on the ship together and left, and then they could have put May on some planet far away if she wanted to go out on her own and not be with Khmer anymore. All well. They didn't have to completely erase 16 years of her life. Oh, and erased part of the previous 8 years of her life because she doesn't remember that she has a sister at all. So that she's like, 2 rungs above a vegetable, I guess. At this point, they erased so much from this woman. So yeah, I thought that was ridiculous. Did this episode save the season? It's not the worst episode of the season. I'll say that. But did it save the season? No, it did not save the season. There's still way too many problems that we'll of course get into.
Yeah. Merv, I'm going to ask you a sensitive question, a personally sensitive question. But if you had hair, would you have pulled it by the fact that you know there's going to be a season 2?
I mean, they clearly want there to be a season 2. I can only assume that maybe there's going to be a season 2, but given how much backlash this show has received, does anybody really even want a season 2? I know there's people out there who enjoy this show and are actually interested to see where the story goes. But yeah, this season, I can easily walk away from this television series and be happy, at least until I hear that things have, gone around, and maybe then I'll check it out again. You know what I mean? But at this point, yeah, I think Too Little Too Late's a good encapsulation of this. Too Little Too Late applies to this episode as well. Like, we really don't need to be leaving cliffhangers for season 2 whenever the show in season 1 didn't really satisfy us to any real extent. But just a brief, I have to echo the props to the fight choreography. The action sequences in this series have been really enjoyable, very well done. Obviously, a lot of time and effort put into it, and they stand out as a highlight of this series for me. If I could just cut together all the action sequences and just sit down and watch that 45 minutes or however long that would be, I feel like that would be pretty enjoyable. It's the same problem that there's been since at least episode 3, which is whenever they're not fighting, they're talking and the plot is unraveling. And that's whenever I have just a lot of issues that even when you get answers to stuff, it doesn't really land all that well with me. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag on the light side, No. Light meaning not a lot of good things, but
yeah, I understand. Well, I will let you elaborate later, but I'll start with Taylor. Taylor, normally I ask, do you have any criticisms of this episode, or but that would not be fair. So I turn it around. Are there things you liked about this week's episode? And
I mean, I can just echo everyone else. The action scenes in this show have been great. The special effects, the spaceship chase through the rings around the planet was very, very great visual effects there. If this show has a second season, it won't be the first show that I've watched just to see the action scenes and not giving a crap about anything else going on. So I will probably watch the second season if it happens. Other than that, I mean, there's really not much. I mean, it's sort of answered a few questions. I mean, I'm hard pressed right now to think off the top of my head what questions that we didn't already know the answers to were actually answered. I did remember one thing though. See, a point that's been brought up multiple times is, how the fire spread so fast in the building. You gotta remember when she started the fire and it went up the wall, it hit the control panel. So there's your problem right there, ladies. You got your faulty wiring, and that's gonna cost you extra. So that's what caused it to blow the entire castle apart in a mere matter of minutes, right there. But I mean, I'm trying to right now. I'm trying to think of something good that happened. The
Well, I will throw you
acting
one
was
in.
mostly good. Go ahead.
What about the crystal bleeding and the lightsaber becoming red?
Now, I admit that I am not familiar with all of the lore, all of the Star Wars Legends books and stuff, which are some are canon and some are not canon, whatever. But my understanding is that there is like an actual Sith ceremony of some sort where they crack the kyber crystal and it bleeds. And I'm not sure if there's like actual human blood involved in it, their blood. Like I said, I'm not familiar enough with the lore, but my understanding is that in previous lore, it's more complicated than what we saw in this episode. And I'm not exactly sure what we saw in this episode. The lightsaber got dropped and it broke, and I'm not sure if the crystal got cracked at the same time. Seems like a lightsaber would be a lot more durable than that. But okay, maybe that's what happened. And then Osha picked it up and turned to the dark side in her mind, I guess. And the crystal turns red, and then slowly the blade turns red. It looked kind of cool. I mean, I thought.
Yeah.
Although I still don't really know why she's turned evil exactly, but because you go through all the steps. I mean, okay, she found out that Saul had killed her mother. Why Saul didn't tell her that her mother was a cloud demon monster at the time. I would have told her that rather than I was just trying to save you, and that her sister was disintegrating at the exact same time. A little bit of context goes a long way, but all she found out was that he had killed her mother. So I get that, but I don't see joining Khamir because he's a murderer too. So you know, and their little time they spent together, I don't know if it was a romantic thing. And if that's what they're going with for the storyline, and that's really not the Sith student pupil relationship that we're familiar with. I don't think.
No, that's more for Catholic priests. But anyway.
So like I said, I mean, they only spent a little bit of time together. I mean, he's a straight up murderer.
Mm-hmm.
Killed some of her friends. Now maybe she's decided they're not my friends anymore. You know, Jedi are all bad or whatever, and that's kind of a problem with this whole show. And it leads to what Lord Deathman was talking about and what Lord Deathman wrote on the board also. This deconstruction or whatever you want to call it, the which is kind of rampant throughout Hollywood these days. And I'm going to use a word that we don't use very often on this podcast, but it's woke culture, which is, in a nutshell, is the idea that everything that you've always known to be good has in fact always been bad, and you're stupid if you don't realize that now and agree with us that it's bad. So the Jedi are bad. There's no redeeming Jedi in this entire series. Except the ones that don't talk, you can say, well, they didn't do anything bad. Well, yeah, they didn't even know what was going on. Any Jedi who had a role in this series is a liar. Most of them are murderers. They're all trying to cover stuff up, including I don't know the lady's name, the bald lady.
Fenestra.
Fenestra. She's still covering stuff up.
Yeah, but you can say her Padawan, the only white male Jedi in the whole show, is actually doing well in getting coffee. So he is not evil.
Yeah, exactly. Again, he's one of those ones who has no idea what's going on. He has no information whatsoever because everyone else is lying to each other.
Yeah.
And again, that's fine if that's the kind of story you want to tell, but that's not Star Wars. Again, as Lord Deathman said, Star Wars has been about the light and the dark, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, and everyone can be good and everyone can be bad, but there is a line. Whereas this show was kind of saying, nah, yeah, the Jedi, they're bad. I mean, come on. Again, I'm gonna get a little bit political with the woke. So I mean, they're law enforcement officers. Law enforcement officers are always bad, and they're religious people. Hollywood can't have religious people who aren't lying idiots. They always have to be in Hollywood these days, apparently. But again, it's the deconstruction, and we saw it in the sequel trilogy, where Han and Luke Han and Luke at least were caricatures and total shells of themselves. They'd both become crotchety old men and didn't want to do anything. Han, of course, got killed right away. I don't want to retread the whole sequel trilogy, but I think this is the leadership at Lucasfilm is not giving Star Wars fans Star Wars. They're trying to turn it into something else. But with exceptions, I mean, most of the Star Wars stuff recently has been very good. Even Andor, which is very gritty, but it still has clear lines of right and wrong. You know who the hero is in Andor, even though he has to do desperate things. He's doing them for the right reasons. And The Mandalorian is mostly, old school Star Wars, good and evil. So it's still being made in there, but this show seemed to throw all of that away. And again, I just say, if you want to do a story like that, go right ahead. Some of the stories like that can be great, but don't try to shove it into Star Wars, which again, we've always had the light and the dark, the battle between the two. Anyone can become dark, anyone can become evil, including Jedi. But this show is like there's no difference between the light and the dark, and the Jedi are already all almost just as evil. Maybe they think they have good intentions, but the Sith always thought they had good intentions too. That's not an excuse.
It's like you can have morality, like I said before. You can have morality on your side, but if your actions don't reflect that, are you really good? On the other hand, you can be perceived as evil, but if you are good for your acolyte, as Khmer clearly is for Osha, are you really evil? Those are the questions they're trying to ask. I don't think they did a very good job in the package of it all, showing how. I think the idea is interesting. The execution lacks severely, in my opinion, and that's a waste. And yes, does this belong in Star Wars? I don't know. Yeah, it can belong in Star Wars, but then do it better in a way that fans can get behind it. And I think they just missed the form. The substance was there, the form was lacking, and that's why I opened with that.
And then with let's get into the nitty gritty of the execution. I mean, okay. You've got a person tied down to a table, a prisoner, and you leave a droid multi-tool right next to her hand where she can pull it out and unlock herself and get away. And it doubles as a taser, by the way.
Yeah, but they have been doing that since episode 1. The most stupid things you can imagine with prisoners.
And I don't know why she ran away and stole the ship, and why is everyone going back to Bendok anyway? I honestly did not follow why everyone suddenly wants to go back to Bendok. And then Soul's reasons for not just telling the truth. He said a couple of different times, well, without the twins, I couldn't prove the virgins or whatever. Yeah, you could. It was on your frickin' laptop, dude. The same way you found out there was a virgins. You had their blood tests and screenings and all that stuff. You saw it. Andara saw it. Corbin saw it. I'm not sure if Kanaka saw it or not, but you got 3 Jedi right there who saw the results of the test, and I would hope they keep records of these things. So the whole basis for this is, oh no, we couldn't, prove we had a good reason for what we did due to the virgins because we couldn't prove the virgins because we didn't have both twins. Well, that's just stupid. It's just awful writing. It made no sense at all.
Yeah.
Plus, you would think just the testimony of 3 Jedi would carry a lot of weight, even if they didn't have an actual electronic record. But there you go.
It would hold up in court, I think. But anyway. Merv, we got cameos. Yoda, Vegas. What do you think?
Well, as somebody whose only knowledge of Plagueis stems from the conversation from episode 3, that meant nothing to me. Other than, oh, hey, there's a guy in the shadows. That's probably Kamir's master, maybe? Wonder what he's up to. Oh, okay, it doesn't factor into anything this season, maybe season 2, and then to see the back of Yoda's head at the very end, no, again, nothing. I guess those were just cheap pops for the fans, but at that point, like, they didn't do anything for me. That might have been in episode 1. Like, if I'd have saw Yoda in episode 1, that might have been oh, cool, But in episode 8, like, it's just, again, it's too late. It doesn't do anything for me now. You're not going to get me more excited for a season 2 by showing me the back of Yoda's head or some guy I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where that left me. Yeah. So, getting into it a little bit, just to come around to some of this again, I was thinking about, so like this show is structured as like, oh, showing us a flavor of the dark side or whatnot, but why don't they actually do that? Like, so they're showing us characters who are on the dark side, but they have to make the dark side the more favorable side by showing the good side as flawed as possible. Why don't they just give us a show that embraces the dark side, maybe makes them relatable, but then continues to show us that these characters are clearly doing objectively bad things, but that their moral choices are in the dark. Like I mean, there's a million shows you can choose from now to take inspiration from this stuff, like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, which I talked about on the board this week. Like, both those shows feature main characters that are objectively bad. They may not start objectively bad, but they definitely get there at certain points. In this case, Sopranos, he's objectively a bad guy from the start, but he has like empathetic traits about him. He's a family guy and this and that and the other thing. But when push comes to shove, almost every morality decision he makes or they make are evil, for lack of a better word. Why couldn't you just take that, where like we like these characters, we know these characters are doing bad things, but we still like them anyway? I mean, it's been 20 years of television has been doing that successfully, and then this show just has to do it where like the only possible choice of a protagonist is the evil character, because everyone else is so corrupt and hiding things and killing people, and it just didn't. Like, I wish it was done better. Again, I just wish it was done better. It's an interesting idea that if people knew how to make a better TV show, and it could have somehow come close to stuff like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, as far as that level of showing the other side of the tracks. Our protagonist as villains, that would have been really interesting. As far as this show goes, in this episode. Again, the fight sequence, the fight sequence between Kamir and Saul, I thought was great. I love the little flashes of kung fu stuff, like the wire stunt work that they did. It was short lived, but it they did a little bit of that. I felt like in the first 2 episodes, then it kind of got away from the kung fu vibes, but it came back to it in this episode, so I enjoyed that. Kind of wish the whole series did that, like it just kind of revolved around that kung fu type, combat. But so I thought that was all good. I still think Kamir is doing a great job. The actor is doing a great job. The character is by far the most interesting character on the board. Saul, this show really could be just boiled down to what Saul doesn't say, because he just will not say the things that he needs to say to make things better or save his own life, and it's just like frustrating that he just won't tell Osha or May like the stories, finally does, and then they zap him before he actually gets a chance to say the important part, which doesn't even matter. Like, Osha and May being one person, does that even factor in? They're not one person. They have totally different ambitions, desires, and personality traits. They're 2 people. They're as much twins or sisters as anything else. Them being like one consciousness split matters zero to anything. I don't know how it
Yeah.
factors into anything.
And
So that just landed like a dead duck as far as a plot element.
I was thinking in the show, okay, they're obviously the same person. At least that's how they sell it. One is the good side, one is the bad side, but then they flip sides.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work anymore.
No.
So
Yeah,
I don't know the reason why they make such a big deal out of it. It's one person, because they're not split in good and evil. They're also the line that Taylor was talking about earlier. It's not there.
Yeah. And it does not like it flips back. Like whenever Osha starts leaning into the dark side, it's not like May all of a sudden becomes like morally good because she's not willing to kill somebody or something. Like that doesn't necessarily make you a good person. I mean, sure, it's a good trait to have, but it's not like the roles were totally reversed by the end anyway. They just kind of both took their lessons from life and adapted to them and made mistakes and decisions along the way, just like any other normal person. So I really don't know what that had to do with anything other than just a thing in the plot that just wound up not mattering. The only another one I mentioned characters this whole series, but even especially in this episode too, characters just doing things that were very contrary to everything I understood that character to be up until that point. It's been happening throughout this entire series, and I've mentioned it several times, but why did Basil all of a sudden start ripping the ship apart? The only thing I could think is he thought Saul was going to crash and kill them both. But there really needs to be a better way, if that was his motivation, to display that with two characters, one who can barely speak English and the other one who's speaking some alien language that you know. They really needed to somehow display his motivations better, because I'm immediately like, well, wait a minute, does he know that Saul's evil now or something? Like, immediately sidetracked because Basil's all of a sudden, the last episode that we saw him, he's attacking May. Sorry, I was getting them confused in my head. He was attacking May, and now here he's sabotaging Saul. And there's no reason to switch sides from my perspective as far as Basil's concerned at this point. So again, it's just one more moment of where a character's doing something, and I'm not sure why they're doing it. You know, they're just making decisions seemingly on the fly in vastly different directions towards whatever end game they think is best for them. But that's kind of what this whole series kind of boiled down to for me, was like not understanding where the characters are going with their actions is like my biggest complaint, I guess I'd say, about this show. So biggest prop to the combat choreography, biggest complaint would be, I mean, there's a lot of complaints, but the biggest one is for sure not being able to understand the characters and who they are and where they come from and where they're going. So yeah.
Okay. I will come back to you later about the whole show, and well, anyway, I will do the round after we do the rating. But first, Taylor had a follow-up before I move to Lord Deathman.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Merv said. The motivations of all the characters are so muddled and changing all the time. And again, we don't really know how exactly they created the twins. We don't really know why they created the twins. But my biggest question is, okay, so you did something, you created life. Why did you split this one person into two people? What was the purpose of that? Still don't know. But I wanted to follow up also on the Yoda. I don't think they even brought the real Yoda in for that to shoot that one scene. You know, on TV shows, they use body doubles for those over-the-shoulder shots. So I'm thinking that was probably just Yoda's body double.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Lord Deathman, you know what? I will just let you ramble.
Well, I'm going to try not to ramble, and I really am going to try to keep my commentary solely to this episode, and I might offer some overall thoughts about the show when we get to the rating part. But honestly, I do have a huge amount of respect for the martial arts choreographers in this episode, and for anyone who did any of the orchestration of the saber battles. I do think that was really exciting and really well executed. I also think that the episode, while it might not make the best effort to clarify like ongoing mysteries, I do think it was trying to clarify some character motivations and trying to make things that seemed really muddled um, a little bit easier to understand. I don't think that they were very successful, but at least there was an effort to try and do it. And again, even if they were successful, my argument is still that it's just too late at this point. I don't have any investment in any of these characters anymore because they all seem to go whichever way the wind blows at the moment in the story. So it's just hard to latch on to a character and kind of root for them in their journey. One of the scenes that stands out in this episode to me as extremely odd, even though it parallels another scene from Star Wars, is Osha and the stranger standing together hand in hand. They're kind of enjoying this sunset. That again, it's been mentioned, I think, by Taylor here, that them holding hands doesn't seem like the normal acolyte kind of master relationship, and how we've moved from student teacher to romantic partners just seemed a little odd. It seemed like someone wanted to do that scene only because they just wanted to do that scene, and that it didn't necessarily make sense to the actual characters or what was going on with them internally. There's a similar scene where Darth Vader and the Emperor kind of stand together. They're not holding hands, to be clear, but they're looking out at the construction of the Death Star, and they're kind of like soaking themselves in their new empire and in how and their vision of the universe. This seems like an odd parody of that scene, but with like romantic connotations to it. So, I think it's as if Leslie Headland and the other filmmakers want us to celebrate the romantic union of a woman who just murdered an unarmed man and a sociopath who murdered several Jedi just a mere handful of episodes back. So I found that to be an oddly hilarious moment in the episode that literally made me laugh out loud. Um, Other problems that I can quickly go through. I'm not sure why Basil had that anxiety attack on the ship regarding Soul. As Merv astutely pointed out, what was going on there. Maybe he finally succumbed to my fear of rodentia, and it's like, this is a giant rat. uh, yeah, I think there's a poor use of lore and canon here. I'm not sure what was going on with the lightsaber changing colors. I thought you kind of like as the Sith were issued a red lightsaber, not that the saber you crafted would somehow kind of magically turn red. But I admit to not being an expert on the lore or that. But that seemed a little weird to me. The cameos, again, I've said it in the past. I think that this show is very exploitative of its fan base. You show two characters like Yoda and Darth Plagueis who mean something to the fandom. You give them 0 lines, and you make sure that it's exactly like 3 seconds of screen time for each of those characters, rather than in trying to insinuate them into the story in some meaningful way. That says to me that, oh, we want to show this because it's definitely going to be a hook to bring them back, but we have no idea how we really want to use Yoda, or what Darth Plagueis is really, what his appearance in this really means. They're just little plants that kind of like, yeah, we know who these characters are because we read these books too, and we watched the other things, but we have no idea what we're going to do with them yet. The mind wiping was comical. I don't know who can do a selective mind wipe on that level. It's like, even as you're hearing it, it was like, oh wow. People laugh at superhero tropes where that kind of thing happens, but it's even more comical in the world of Star Wars. So how do you kill a Jedi without a weapon? You take their weapon and then you force choke them out. It's that simple, right? You just go back once again to some old lore where Vader has choked out people like that. But I think the Force counts as a weapon, so I would give her an F in this particular exam. Um, Venestra's scheming, oh my God. Again, um, Taylor has pointed this out. Merv has pointed it out to a certain extent. It's like if you wanted to tell a story of Jedi breaking bad, and it was like a continuation of the story we'd already seen in contemporary times, go for it. go for the Bad Batch Jedi story or whatever it is you want to do. But to paint the Jedi with such a broad brush that says not only are they the bad guys, but they've retroactively always been the bad guys since the very beginning of this entire saga. It's just insulting. I don't have any other. I'm trying to be constructive here, but that really bothers me. But I do see there's some fans who are out there. They're like, bro, you need to get over it. Good and evil. That's old school. We're beyond that. Have you read Nietzsche? We're beyond good and evil now. We're telling more sophisticated stories. This isn't about your simple morality plays anymore. This is going to be about people who are feeling trauma and reacting. A small diversion, if the panel will permit me, but if you've ever watched House of the Dragon, right, that's an excellent dramatic show where you get beautiful costumes, great special effects, wonderful drama, and impeccable acting. But at some point, it becomes fatiguing to me to just watch the depravity of the week. What kid is going to get killed? Who's going to be assaulted in an undignified manner? And my biggest problem with a show like that is as good as House of the Dragon is, I have no idea who to root for on this. Like, at least in Game of Thrones, we had Jon Snow, and while not a perfect character, he certainly represented, like, we got to deal with this kind of threat that's coming from beyond the wall, and we really need to get it together as a group, guys. But nothing like that exists in House of the Dragon. It's just a show full of assholes, and you're like, could be blacks this week, could be greens this week. And if you want to turn Star Wars into that, I would say good luck. I'm not going to have anything to do with that anymore. Last 2 points. The Acolyte, I think I will pull this back a little bit, but I do think that this show has single-handedly done some of the most damage to the Star Wars mythology of some of the recently produced Disney Plus shows. I think it's just done a disservice to it. Again, it just makes it impossible to determine who to root for. And at the end of the day, I disagree with the show's overall creative vision. I'd hoped for a larger scale clash of ideologies between the Jedi and the Sith, but this show seems to want to explore more petty vendettas. It wants to wallow in personal traumas, past PTSD that people are going through. This isn't really about the Sith or the Jedi. This is how people are kind of responding to painful incidents from their past, and they're kind of lashing out in these bizarre, sociopathic, homicidal ways. This doesn't really have anything to do with the Jedi or the Sith as far as their ideology, as far as I can see. So it makes the show feel kind of small and unimportant to me in the grand scheme of Star Wars, because I could watch this stuff on House of the Dragon. So while I hope they get a second season, and I hope it's a different creative team that can kind of, I don't know how you would pull this off the fire and make something of value of it. But if there was a reason to do a season 2, it would be just like as a dare to somebody. This is as bad as it gets, bro. Can you turn this into something like usable? That would be the only reason I could see for anyone to embark on a second season of this.
Yeah, maybe in season 2 they can cast Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's meant to save Marvels, and then he can save Star Wars as well. But we'll see. I think Taylor.
Sorry. Just want to point out that again with the lightsaber changing red. Again, I thought it looked pretty cool, but it completely breaks lore. Anakin was a full-fledged Sith murdering children, and his lightsaber was still blue. So it was later that he traded it in and got a red light, or he went through this ceremony that I guess exists in lore. But it didn't just change in his hand when he turned to the dark side. So
yeah, but Osha is much more powerful than Anakin.
Oh, so. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, Osha is much more.
So,
yeah, just like everybody said, though, like Lord Deathman said, this is all about petty vendettas, and people with trauma, and the trauma makes them change their minds all the time and change their decisions. Which, okay, that's something to look at in human reality and human nature. But it's not a story. It's not an adventure story about lightsabers and space wizards and all that stuff.
I think
It
that's
just
what Star Wars
vague.
is. An adventure story with with wizards and lightsabers.
Yes. I've seen a lot of people online, some of the people who are defending the show, and God bless them, they can defend the show all they want. But I see a lot of them really jumping through hoops and bending over backwards to try to come up with reasons for why stuff happened, including just making up stuff. You know, like they're doing the writer's job for them. You know, like, well, this happened that way because of this and this was going on, and they were thinking this when that happened. And all of a sudden, but none of that was in the show, dude. You can't just make it up yourself. All right, the writers have to do that job, not you, after the fact.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that going on.
They don't have to show us anything, but when it makes sense, you can deduce it. But if you can't deduce and start making up stuff, then yeah, that's not deduction. That's just.
I am looking forward to one spinoff though. Okay, because I'm pretty sure they're going to announce it at Comic-Con. It's going to be called Tracker, a Star Wars story starring Basil. And he's going to have a protocol droid to translate for him.
Okay, that's good. Lord Deathman?
Yeah, I had a quick follow-up, and I want to offer another criticism of the show, which I'm sure I'm immediately going to get like, yeah, I know, and I'm going to get an explosive package in the mail for Christmas. This isn't a criticism that's been brought up frequently or at all, as far as I can see. But it really is about Amandla Stenberg, who I am sure, in fact, I am certain of it 100% that she is a very capable actress. I've seen her in some of her other work, and she is perfectly serviceable in some of these other roles. But I feel here, casted in the dual role of the Acolyte, and I guess you could call them both the Acolyte at this point. This was a seriously egregious piece of miscasting. And I think in an attempt to advance the cause of representation amongst the gay community or the LGBTQ community, that they didn't choose the best actor for this role. I think there's just something that comes off very emotionless and flat in most of her performances. There's a very stockness to her face. Like really great actors communicate this intensity, and you find their faces interesting even when they're just standing still and doing nothing, like Harrison Ford, for example. But her, she really comes off like a doll when she's not doing anything. I don't think she was able to communicate the sort of psychological ordeal of OSHA or the intensity and the fury of May very successfully. They both seem like exactly the same character to me. And again, this isn't really to knock Amandla Stenberg. I want to be clear on that for anyone who's ready to jump into the comments now. This isn't about her being a bad actress. This is about me just feeling like we should have dug a little deeper with regards to the casting, and it really needed a very capable actor to be able to handle all these different stressful parts of a dual role. That when I look at her, it just like there's also a weirdly nasal quality to her voice that undercuts some of her dramatic lines at points that again, it sounds like I'm being cruel or nitpicking. Just wanted to get those points out there.
No, fair enough. At least you can back it up. Yeah. Well, let's just move over to the rating. First up, we're going to rate the season finale, and then you can rate the whole show as a whole, and then we're going to discuss the whole show as a final round. I'm going to start with you, Merv.
All right, I'm gonna go 5 out of 10 because I think the combat was highly enjoyable, and that was bulk of at least the middle chunk of this episode. Even from the spacecraft combat to the hand-to-hand combat to the lightsaber duel, I thought that was all pretty well done. It was really just in the story details that it loses some points for me. And I will say props to, even though I didn't know who he was or cared or how he was even involved in the story, but I did think that Darth Plagueis looked pretty good as far as like CGI or whatever they used there. I thought that looked pretty good. So props to that as well, just for one last little positive thing.
And the whole show?
The whole show, I've got to drop it down to like 3 out of 10. For all the reasons that we've mentioned. The only thing I can really latch on to as a very positive thing is the combat. And if it were more prevalent, I think I could probably give it a higher rating, but I have a lot of issues with a lot of the other aspects of the show. So, yeah, unfortunately, probably 3 out of 10 overall for the entire series, season 1 of The Acolyte.
Okay. Lord Deathman?
Wow. I think this is going to get the best score of the entire season as an episode. So I am going to agree with Merv and give it a 5 out of 5. The entire series, though, I think by and large is a failure. And there are a lot of people that don't like me using that term. So I guess the alternative to say is I disagree with the creative vision of this show. I know we are in this anti authoritarian moment where it makes sense to people by and large to disagree with scientists, to disagree with your teachers, your doctors, be it a policeman, anyone who represents any kind of authority in our society is kind of being scrutinized. And maybe there's a legitimate function for that in our society and we need it. And this is kind of translated to what's happening, I think, with the Jedi in their portrayal in the Acolyte. They represent authority. They can tell you what to do at some point. So they had to have been corrupt though while doing it. It's just such a creatively bankrupt approach to telling the story that the series, I have to award it a 3 out of 10 Kyber crystals, maybe even a 2.5. Let's say one of the crystals is cracked and not functioning properly. So 2.5, because it's just so of the moment, and I think it's pretty lazy and creatively bankrupt. Yeah.
And to be clear, he meant for the episode 5 out of 10, not 5 out of 5. I'm sure.
Yes, that was 5 out of 10. To be
Yeah.
clear, 5 Kyber crystals out of 5 for the episode.
10.
10.
Out of 10. I'm sorry, guys. Brain fog.
If you really liked it, go ahead and say it, man.
Yeah. Well, never mind. Taylor, what's your number for this week's episode?
I just want to point out one more thing that happened in this episode. Jedi and Sith apparently are Batman now. They do the Batman trick where you glance away for 1 second and turn around and they've disappeared. Now, we know Quimir can fly, by the way. We remember that. So he probably did a Mary Poppins and took off. But I don't know how May disappeared that fast when OSHA just looked up for 1 sec. But anyway, they got the Batman trick down now. Oh, ratings. I'll give the episode a 6. The fight scenes were very good. It was the final episode, extra point for ending this monstrosity. So I'll give it a 6. The show overall, yeah, I hate to say it. I'd say a 4 for the season overall. It's very extreme. Like Lord Deathman said, it's been extremely divisive, and I don't think it's done any good for the Star Wars universe at all.
No, on the contrary. It stirred up some controversy, and that's never a good thing. Yeah, I like the final episode of this season. I actually really enjoyed it. I'm gonna go 7 out of 10. I'm gonna go and be positive. I enjoyed it for what it was. I did enjoy the cameos, although it did not say it didn't do anything, but at least I was pointing at the TV like I was Leonardo DiCaprio. And overall, I got a little bit more of sense of what they were trying to do this season overall. And like you guys said, the fight scenes were great. I can't fault this finale. If you compare it to the rest, it was like a masterpiece. So 7 out of 10. For the season overall, I'm going 2 out of 10. I'm going to be very harsh here.
Wow.
Yeah, because I go back to my opening statement, opening question to Lord Deathman. If you focus so much on substance and totally disregard the form, it's just bad art. And Star Wars is like a unique franchise in the world of pop culture. You may even argue that it's the biggest and best franchise in the world of pop culture. And to treat it like the showrunners and the writers have done, that deserves harsh criticism. And I think it's a 2 out of 10. And I thought it was absolutely terrible. And the show has potential, hence the 2. Otherwise, it would have been a 1. But they didn't execute it well at all on any level. Only the fights, the action was great. But as you guys know, I'm more for story and character development than for action. If I want to watch action, I will just take out an old 80s action movie and watch that, because those were much more better and with less VFX. So, no. That's not why I like Star Wars. And the reason I like Star Wars, they didn't handle very well. So 2 out of 10. And that brings us to the next discussion. And I'm going to surprise my panel members here a bit. Here we have it. It's quite obvious they want a season 2. If they get it, I don't know, but Disney probably needs it for their streaming service at some point. So we will get probably a season 2. If we do, my question is to you. Are you going to watch it and are you going to review it? And I'm going to start with you, Taylor.
Yeah, I will watch it. Like I said, I will watch it at least for the action scenes. If it's as bad as this season, though, I'll review it. But no one's gonna want to hear what I have to say about it. I mean, there's so many. One of the things that frustrates me about this season is it's all set up for the second season. We all thought going in that May was the Acolyte, but no, this whole season was to turn Osha into the Acolyte. So the title character of the show didn't even become the Acolyte until the final episode. So we have to come back next season to see what really happens and find out who Kimura is and why he does the stuff he did and how he found May and all this other stuff. And of course, they'll have to add more mystery boxes. What they should have done was shown us exactly what happened on Bendoc at the very start of the season. That way we'd know where everyone was coming from and what they were thinking and what motivated them, what they had seen and what they had not seen. And May should have turned evil like halfway through the season instead of what they did, but they didn't ask me to write it, so.
Yeah, that's true. Lord Deathman?
Wow, this is one of those shows where I do think they should quit while they're ahead and not produce a season 2, unless, of course, they're handing it over to an entirely different creative team that can kind of heal some of the problematic aspects of the show and make it more coherent.
They won't.
I would say there's, yeah, like
the toys are being sold out, and apparently the viewing numbers are very high, so it's a success.
Wow. So the second question being, would I watch it? And the answer is, I'm willing to give it a chance, but I think I would be a little gun shy. But by episode 2, 3, if we're just going down this maze of esoteric lore and unresolved mysteries, I know personally I will have dropped out, but I'm happy to join in on technical reviews with the champions to kind of say, each week why this was terrible.
Or why it's good, because it still can become good.
It could become good.
Yeah, you see, we're all optimistic here and happy and good people, not toxic.
Anybody who wants to place bets now? Yoda is going to become part of a conspiracy to hide the truth from the
God.
Jedi Council and the Senate.
Okay.
I'm
Oh my
sorry,
God,
guys.
it's close to my
Snatch the
bedtime.
children
I don't have time to process this and not lie awake all night. Thank you for that, Taylor. Merv, are you going to watch season 2? If there's a season 2, and will you join us on the reviews or not? And it's an open question. You can answer it the way you like.
I think it would largely depend on how you guys felt about episode 1. I'm hoping you guys watch it before I have an inkling to. That way I can gauge whether or not it's actually going to be worth my time. It also, just throwing this out there, it will depend on how deep into the Star Trek universe I'm going to be at that time, because there's plenty of other TV to watch. I don't have to waste my time watching something I'm probably going to dislike anyway. So, you know, I'm behind on the Star Trek stuff. So I'm like 30 years behind. So
Well, you're catching up. And
I just want to point out that this whole season 1 was it's my least favorite type of television, where they string you along without giving you any information, and I can't stand it. And like so they wait till the very end to give you a little bit of information, and then all they do is add more hooks for season 2. And it just, that kind of thing just drives me nuts as far as like a structural stand. Like, just, I want to enjoy it. Just tell me what's going on and let me enjoy it. You know, you can have mysteries, but you can't have everything be a mystery. And I think that's the problem with this show.
Exactly. If you tell a good cohesive story over the course of 8 episodes, and then in the last 2 or 3 episodes, you start to set up things for season 2, and leave you with a cliffhanger, then that's totally fine. We have seen that a million times before, and that's totally fine. We know the drill. But this is just like none of that, to make it short. So I think if there's a season 2, we will be back to review it. And we are hoping it will be worth our time. That's the conclusion, I think. So, that will conclude this week's review of Champions for episode 8 of the Acolyte and our review series for the Acolyte. We hope you have enjoyed our discussions in the last few weeks. If you did, help us out, like and share this review, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and join our forum at Sakar. Again, the link is in the description below. We would love it if you join the forum. There are some great peoples there, and some squids, by the way. Next week, we will be reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine, but we will do that. We normally record on Saturday, drop our video on Sunday, but we will record that review on Sunday, and it will drop later in the week, so be patient. And episode 8 of the Star Trek Project, which will be much better than episode 8 of the Acolyte, is also on the way. The Voyage Home, I just watched it, it's great. For now, I thank you all, also on behalf of our champions, and wish the Force to be with you always. Bye.